Good to go? Dr. Dean?
Yeah, let's go.
Welcome to the Coffee Pump Podcast.
Thank you very much, Sajid.
I just want to, so this is for everyone in the room, all right? I just want to read this out. Dr. Mujahid Feroze Din. He's a consultant ear, nose, and throat surgeon since 1992. He's the head of ENT in the Aga Khan University Hospital, Nairobi. He's also a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Former chairman of the Kenya Ear, Nose, and Throat Society, KENTS, if that's correct.
That's right.
You're also the founding member and program coordinator of CIGOK, which is the Cochlear Implant Group of Kenya, that pioneered cochlear implantation in Kenya. That's the in-ear device for people who have...
It's CIGOK, cochlear implantation.
Okay.
It's a device, we can of course talk about it later, but it's a device that is used for people who can't hear.
So beyond all that, beyond being well known in the medical industry, one thing that caught my attention was you're also a musician and an artist. And I was like, how does that work? And you have published albums, you've got multiple albums that you've released. And so I said, I was actually talking to Butch Amit, who's one of your patients.
Right.
And he said, Sajid, I think Dr. Dean would work wonders on your podcast. So I just needed to get you on. So thank you for taking the time to come.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start with music and medicine. Yes, that's one that's very interesting. But I want to start at the very beginning, if that's okay. Funny enough, we were actually talking before the camera went on. Our families sort of know each other. You know Papa, you know my granddad.
Absolutely.
This was, did you ever meet my granddad?
Oh, yes. I mean, he was a client of mine and I did meet him on occasion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Babuji, as they used to call him.
Yes.
And so this was...
He was very prominent in our community. And even his presence, he had a very... his personality was something that was endearing.
Yeah.
From what I remember. It's been a while since he passed on.
What I do remember about him was he was larger than life.
Yes.
He was very tall.
Yeah, absolutely.
His voice as well. When he used to walk into a room, he'd laugh. He was always a jolly person.
Yeah.
I think the only time I saw him angry, Mom reminds me on this, is in a joking way. I was a kid. I was a very lazy kid. And him and I were both sitting on a sofa. And he was telling me, why don't you close the window? It's starting to rain. I'm like, you're sitting closer to the window. And he's like, you're talking to your grandfather like that? He's like, no, you're sitting closer. So what I did was I got up and I went across the room. I'm like, now you're closer. just grandson pulling granddad's leg. But Papa as well, Mom and Dad, you're also familiar with them.
Absolutely.
And funny enough, Tasir, your son,
yes,
him and I actually went to the same school together.
Yes.
So we were talking about that. And I'm going to get back to that in a bit as to why that associates. But if we could start at the very beginning, what sort of led you into medicine? What was the appeal to it?
I have a very it's a statement which I make often to my students and even to younger people, that it's really not what you do, but how well you do it. It's sort of my mantra.
Yeah.
You can do almost anything, and if you're doing it badly,
There's no point in doing it.
there's no point. And if you're doing something, do it well. So I think medicine, I don't think, I mean, very honestly, I don't think I had a burning desire to become a doctor when I was a child.
Gee.
And I'll share something with you which you'll find extremely funny. Do you know what my first desire was? My first coveted profession?
What was that?
Was that I wanted to be a bus conductor.
Bus conductor?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. You see, those years when we were, when I was in my single figures and maybe the adolescence, we used to travel by bus. And in the bus, you had a bus conductor who had a satchel full of money, and he also had a machine which used to, manually write the tickets. So I found it intriguing. I said, this is the profession to be, So
this was this was
when I was probably 8, 9 years old.
And this was in Nairobi at the time.
So Nairobi, yes, absolutely Nairobi. I grew up in Park Road, and this is my early childhood.
So which school did you go to?
Yeah, in Park Road, the school is now called Muslim Academy.
Yes.
And just for the record, in those days, you may already know this, but it was called Muslim Girls School. So Muslim Girls School. At that time, there was some years when I was a bit shy of saying it. Now I say it and have a good laugh about it.
I remember about that. There was someone telling me that he once went for an interview And they asked him, which school did you go to? And he's like, Muslim girls' school. And the interviewer looked at him and was like, you're a boy. Why did you go to that?
Yeah,
But it was
yeah.
like Muslim Academy at the time.
It's
right?
now Muslim Academy.
Gee.
And they used to have boys, but it was largely a girls' school. So
Gee.
I used to walk to school. It was just probably about maybe a kilometer from where we stayed at Park Road.
Yeah.
So that was my first sort of vision of, oh, this man has a bag full of money and he has this cool machine which takes out tickets. But of course, things change. You see, when I went to secondary school, I was in Jamhuri High School.
So Papa was in Jamhuri as well.
Yeah.
Okay, fun. It was quite a well-known school at that time.
Jamhuri High School, previously known as Duke of Gloucester, was one of the schools to go to during the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about the 70s. And it was a day school. Now it's actually a boarding school as well.
Yeah.
So once, went to secondary school, you get a feeling that you're going to move towards sciences. I was not towards history and geography. I was more towards physics and chemistry and maths. And so O-levels happened, and then suddenly you're in A-levels. Those days we had O-levels and A-levels. There was no 844. So once I reached A-levels, I chose physics, chemistry, and biology. And it so happens, and this is, I think, the way maybe sometimes things work out simply because of chance. But I have two elder sisters who are both doctors, and they were both studying medicine at that time. So I said, yeah, I think it seems to be a good idea. Why not just become a doctor,
Yeah.
And it was not that I must become a doctor. So applied for it. And I knew I was not going to go abroad.
Yeah.
I knew that knowing our situation, I was going to study locally. So I have to work hard. There used to be a very big competition. We only had one university those days.
University of Nairobi.
University of Nairobi.
It was the only one.
So I fortunately got my first choice. And I had dear friends who, everywhere were as motivated as I was, who some missed the grade by 1 mark. And they did other things.
It's quite competitive at that time.
It was extremely competitive.
If you don't mind me asking, how old were you? What year was this when you...
Yeah, this was I did my A-levels in 1979, and I was 17.
So do you know, at that particular time, coming from a Desi background, going for a degree was a very unique phenomenon because not many people went after it, especially I'm talking even in our community cycle.
Yeah.
In our community cycle, sort of my generation was probably majority of the first generation to go for masters and degrees. So at that time, you doing it in the 80s, late 70s, it was a very, very big...
Yeah, I think you're right. Also as you well know, in our community, another thing which has fortunately changed is that they used to discourage girls from studying. And my dad was absolutely opposite. He was an accountant. He was a career civil servant. He worked for the government for many years. And I have 4 sisters, Sajid, all elder to me.
Mashallah.
And his ambition was that all my children will have degrees.
That's amazing.
Because in his younger years, he didn't manage to get a degree, which was life, because he was drafted into the army when he was a teenager.
Really?
Yeah. He was born in Pakistan. My mom was born here.
Oh, so originally Pakistan is where you have
our roots. Yeah, but my mom was born here. 1929. And if you know the history, Sajid, Kenya became Kenya in the early 20s. Before that, it was called British East Africa Protectorate.
Yes.
So it was barely Kenya that time. And my mom was born here. My grandfather was the proverbial Indian railway worker.
Yes, a lot of them had
he was
come
a
at
skilled
that time.
worker. He used to fit trains. That was his profession. He was a fitter. Yes. That's what my mom told him. His stamp was that he's a fitter. So she was born here, but then my dad was born in what was that time India, then later became Pakistan. So he was drafted during the Second World War. He was 15 or 16, I think, probably 16. So he missed out on education.
So he was part and parcel of the war effort at that time.
Sure. Yeah, in the British-controlled India.
That's That's
Yeah, these are
amazing.
amazing stories, actually. It's a different chapter. I
It's
have
a
many
completely
stories
different
about
chapter.
that.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
spend a whole
Oh,
podcast just talking about that
absolutely.
time
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
so much rich history and tapestry,
Yeah.
especially within the Indian culture of how we set up over here. Because similar to your family experience, I think on our side as
Oh,
well,
yeah.
everyone had come from India to look for greener pastures. Some were
And,
bought as part of the British industrial might.
and countless families are in that situation. You see,
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably in your case, it would be your great grandfather. For my case,
Yeah.
it was my grandfather.
Grandfather.
So
Yeah.
he came here as a young man, 1911, 1912. And so he had most of his children here. Now, let me tell you the tragedy. And I mean, we all get treated for malaria. It's not even, you don't even think about it. You get malaria, take a few tablets and you're fine. Now, it wasn't like that those days. Now, he contracted malaria in Kenya and he died at a very young age of 40 something, 45, 46,
Quite young.
because of a complication of malaria, which now we treat easily. And
So
that is life.
that funny you say that. My namesake, my dad's brother, Sajid, he passed away in Garissa when he was barely a baby because of the same.
Yeah.
And my dad was telling me their genetics. Maybe that's the reason I'm obsessed with girls with green eyes. But Sajid had green gray eyes. In our family, there's quite a lot. I'm sure you know Bilal, Vayani, our cousins. They've all got blue eyes and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So he was this masoom
This is
bichara
Aryan
kid.
blood, somewhere along the line.
Somewhere along the line.
It's this Alexander who did all
Yeah,
this,
probably. So unfortunately, he passed away by something that's over-the-counter drug can take care of. It's funny how times have evolved.
Yeah.
So to circle back to now you joining Nairobi University,
Yes.
how was your experience just first entering university?
Yeah, it was, I think, once you get there and once you know this is your chosen path,
Yeah.
I think you get into the groove. You make friends. The friends I made in university are my friends up to
Lifelong
date.
friends.
We've got, thanks to WhatsApp, we have groups of our class and others. They're managers and professors and CEOs and everything. And it's beautiful because I think those are your formative years. Your mind is maturing, and someone who can understand. If those people who can understand each other at that age, between 18 to 24, you bind. And so university from a friendship perspective was great. Studying was fantastic. I mean, we were 105 in our class, if I remember correctly. Now the same class, I teach. As you were mentioning, in the university, we have 550 students in the same class.
5x.
Yeah, we have increased our enrollment 5 times, and it was great. We had a few hiccups. Again, this is historical. There was a very famous doctor strike when I was in first year, when the doctors downed their tools, and we, the medical students, supported the doctors.
Was this due to pay or
Working conditions?
working conditions? Okay.
And they went on strike, and the university was closed for a number of months. But the real issue came in 1982. And the attempted coup, which lasted, I think, all of 3 hours. And you see, what happened is when the small band of Air Force people took over it was VOK that time, not KBC, they started announcing that they've taken over the country. And some students, they didn't represent me, but some students came online and said the University of Nairobi supports the new government.
Wow.
So, of course, they were overthrown in a matter of hours. Because it's a small band. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But still a very heavy impact on
a huge impact. It's a huge impact on our politics, but that's a different cup of tea as well.
Yeah.
So we were literally thrown out of the university that very day. We were told, vacate the university. The university is closed, and we remained closed for 9 months.
Really?
All of us lost a year. 9 months. And we had to get readmitted. We had to... By the way, those days I was living in Nairobi West. This is a few 500 meters from here. You know this Muhoho Avenue.
Yes,
It wasn't called Muhoho Avenue. It was called Jinnah Avenue. So we were staying on Jinnah Avenue. Yeah, when we moved here, it was called Jinnah Avenue.
Funny enough, Dad and them actually stayed in Nairobi West as well.
Yeah. So that's the first time I realized that we have a chief, because we were supposed to report to our chief, and I didn't know that a chief existed in Nairobi West.
Correct.
But you bet, there was a chief, and we used to go there every morning, sign our names, and we used to sit there till 5 p.m. So then after a bunch of us, maybe about 15, 20 of us from this location, and the chief, after 5-6 days, he realized these guys are harmless. So he said, listen, you can come for half a day. And after another 2 weeks, said, listen, just come for a few hours, and so on. So with our 9 months, that's how they passed.
Wow.
Yeah, but we made use of those 9 months. Maybe when we talk about other things, I'll tell you what I did during those 9 months.
Dr. Dean, before we get into the 9 months, now we've officially got a coffee sponsor on the Coffee Pump podcast, and they've sort of given us a gift for you.
Oh, that's really nice.
This is a company called Connect Coffee Roasters.
Okay.
They've got various branches across Nairobi.
Right.
To be honest, not just because they're sponsoring, but I have been a fan of this since 2016. When I first started having my meetings, I used to go to them. This is a Juliet blend of coffee.
Thank you very much.
This is a barista pouch. So if you think
And
about...
this is Kenyan coffee.
This is Kenyan coffee.
All right.
It's made by a Korean chap. They've got various branches across.
Yeah. I must admit, this is the first time I've read this brand.
So right next to at Chiromo campus,
Fantastic.
they do have the coffee place there.
Oh, yes.
Next to the Uber offices, that's Connect Coffee.
Thank you very much for
No,
this.
so that's an
to
extension. I
Connect
told them
Coffee.
you're coming.
Yeah.
So this is for you.
Thank you very much.
Are you a coffee drinker or you're a chai drinker?
I drink both.
Gee.
As a routine, I drink tea,
Gee.
but I do enjoy my cup of coffee.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Let me know once you have it what
I
your
will
thoughts are.
certainly give you feedback on that.
Perfect. So now let's talk about that 9 months. What did you get up to in the 9 months when the university is closed? Because all of a sudden it's a shock.
It was a shock, and we knew that they would take us back. I mean, because you can't just
Were you
stop.
Sorry to cut you short.
Yes.
Were you scared at any point where, okay, are we going to stay in the country? Are we going to move? What's going on? Or
We were, as I mentioned to you, I'm a born and bred Kenyan.
Huh.
We had no
intention.
doubts about what was happening. I mean, we knew there was an issue,
Yes,
but we're not going to go anywhere.
correct.
This is home.
This is home. Where are we going to go? Yeah.
This is my Shago. Nairobi West is my Shago.
Yes, yeah.
So there was nowhere to go.
Yes.
So there was. If you've read the history, there was a lot of targeting of people who had houses and cars and stuff by those who did not. This is the common looting thing that happens
in town and stuff.
in town, especially in Pangani and Eastleigh areas.
Yeah.
It didn't reach Nairobi West, thank God.
Gee.
And so we knew it was a matter of time. And those were the days when the video, if you remember, the VHS tapes had just come to Kenya.
So new technology.
New technology. There was no video before then. And it was just at that time when we could start watching movies on VHS. Have you seen VHS tapes? Perhaps you haven't.
I remember as a kid we used to watch VHS originally.
So I think during those 9 months, a lot of VHS videos were watched. But I think what really helped me was when things stabilized a bit, I decided to pursue some formal training in my second passion, which was music.
Music, okay.
Yeah, and I had my first formal classical music lessons from a gentleman who passed on last year. Actually, he emigrated to England, and he was a Singh gentleman. His name was Gyani Gulsharan Singh, and he was a priest. He was a priest in the large Singh temple in town. There's a big Singh temple in town. The biggest one, actually, one of the biggest ones.
A big Gurdwara,
So I was introduced to him through some, common friends, and they said, if you're interested, he will teach you.
And so did you all, was it out of curiosity, or were you listening to Gazal music and all, or sort of this form of music as a...
It had already started. You see, I mean, my interest in music is from childhood. Yeah, I am at that. Before then, I was a self-taught. I had already in my teens learned how to play the harmonium on my own.
You taught
I
yourself?
had borrowed somebody's mini harmonium. and tinkered with it for day and night until I figured out how notes work.
That's amazing.
And by that time, I'd also, from a book, learned how to play a guitar, much to the amusement of my other, colleagues and my classmates. And mainly I was interested in film songs,
Gee.
because that time's what it was, movies, movie songs.
Movie songs.
But then, your mind sometimes wants to know more. There are depths of enjoyment.
I guess that's how Taseer also became a great guitar player.
You can enjoy something simply, oh, great beat, great tune. Or you can go one step further. What is the lyricist saying?
Yeah.
How is the composition? And you can go one step deeper on what is it composed? What is the true meaning of this? And there's so many layers.
Yes.
So I started, I think, going through the layers. And then I was told by mutual friends between me and my first teacher that if you have to get to the core, if you want to learn our ethnic music, you see, I'm interested in my mother tongue, which is Urdu and Punjabi.
Yeah.
So that's the music I was interested in. So if you want to learn that, you had better learn something about what is Indian classical music, which of course is completely different from Western classical music.
Very
It's
different.
Completely different. Of
Yes.
course, the notes are the same, but the whole ideology is different.
Different.
So that was my first exposure to, and I think it went on for about 6 months until the university sort of reopened. I mean, it started somewhere around the middle.
Yeah.
And I think that, sort of started the snowball effect.
I can imagine. And so there's a lot more to that story. But now universities have opened back. You're back over there. What sort of made you want to focus on being an ENT? Because obviously there's a variety of things you can do.
Sajid, there are always stories. As a young doctor, I was posted to Nyeri.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was working in Nyeri, and at that time, a few doctors.
Gee.
So you do a lot of work. As a qualified doctor, you're expected to do, for example, simple operations at that time, appendectomies, cesarean sections, and others. You're expected to do them. So you have some seniors there who teach you and guide you, but you're expected to do.
So you get hands-on experience as well.
Hands-on on a variety of skills that you develop and a variety of subjects.
Gee.
So a year after that, I decided that I needed to specialize. I didn't want to remain a basic doctor. I wanted to specialize. And my first, inclination, believe it or not, was to become a gynecologist. Without any names, there was a hospital that wanted to start a program.
Gee.
And so I applied, and I got a place. And you'll be surprised to know, I think, that unfortunately, the day I was supposed to report, I was advised by friends, listen, Mujahid, don't resign. First go and see. Because private hospitals are not like government. Government, once they've written it, it's going to stay like that.
Yeah.
But someone may change.
True.
And so it was one of the best pieces of advice I've ever had. So I didn't resign. I took leave of absence and reported to the new institution. And it's the first day. And the gentleman who had interviewed me saying, okay, you'll start with this. And I said, that's not what we discussed, including remuneration, but including the plan of work. I said, but it was supposed to be something else. He said, no, I'm sorry, but this is what it is. And do you know, I walked out. I said, no.
So they had changed all of a
They
sudden.
somehow changed between my interview, must have been a month, and my time of reporting. They changed their, what are they called, terms of service and their the plan for the degree. And it actually never happened. That degree never happened at that time. So I came back to my little cottage. I had a little bungalow, not a cottage, in Nyeri.
Gee.
On top of a hill. We used to see Mount Kenya every day.
That must have been beautiful.
Oh, so it's a beautiful phase of my life. 2 years of living in absolute heaven.
Nyeri is peace and quiet.
Peace and quiet. And every day you look at the mountain. I mean, you don't blame anyone for saying God lived there.
Yeah.
Because it is just too beautiful.
Can imagine that.
And so I went back there, and then I applied. I knew I wanted to cut. I wanted to be a surgeon. And during my undergraduate days, I had been very inspired by one teacher of ours who was an ENT surgeon. It often happens like this. And this, I meet my own students now, and
Exposure,
they say that, you know, because of you, I've done this.
Yes.
You get a warm feeling. And so I applied for ENT, got placed in the Nairobi University,
Gee.
and I came back here in 1989.
So you've been obviously in the field for quite a while. One of your notable accomplishments that I read was, and again, correct me on my pronunciation, is the Cochlear implants.
Yes.
That's the in-ear implant. So you actually played a major role in introducing it into Kenya. Maybe can we talk more about that, sort of how that came, how the support structures was? Because I'm assuming you're sort of bringing a technology that's very foreign, very new into a market that's never received it. So
See, when I qualified as an ENT surgeon, that was 1992. It's a long way back.
yeah,
We were hardly a dozen ENT surgeons in Kenya. And due to our training program, we're now about almost 110, 120.
gee,
And in the private sector, there's been a lot of advancement, and in the government sector, I may add. And once you practice for a while, you see the gaps in your field.
So Dr. Din, you were talking about the advancements of the time.
Yes. So as one works in one's field, you start realizing where the gaps are.
Yeah,
And like I said, you know, there is the normal bread and butter day-to-day stuff, which everyone does, keeps food on the table. But then perhaps you want to do more. You want to take your field one step further.
gee,
And about maybe 13, 14 years ago, I realized that the world has moved into helping children and adults who can't hear by introducing what are called cochlear implants. Yeah, it's not a transplant, it's implant. You know,
Implant.
sometimes people confuse. It's not that you're taking the ear and putting.
Yeah.
No. It's an artificial device which is put in the inner ear. So I started self-training, started visiting centers and doing courses. And then we formed a team, and that's the team, the Cochlear Implant Group of Kenya.
Okay.
Some of the people whom we started with we are still together.
You're still together.
So we all had this passion.
Right.
And then we trained ourselves. And then about 11, 12 years ago, we did our first implant in Kenya.
Amazing.
And we've done now over 180 implants
Wow.
with by the blessings of the Almighty, very good success.
Could you tell me more about what this implant does? Does it sort of improve hearing?
Yeah. The classical situation is that, like a child who's perhaps, you may have heard that sometimes children, if there are infections during pregnancy, the infection may damage the inner ear of a newborn. So that child is born without hearing. And usually you won't discover it unless there's a screening program, but the parents probably will discover it around 6-7 months or even 1 year that our child's not responding
accordingly.
Yeah, but of course there are these days, if there is a risk factor, there are tests that can be done on a newborn baby to find out whether his ear is working or not.
Okay.
So let's say we have a child who's 1 year old and we diagnose him that his inner ear is not working, but otherwise he's fine. Simply, his inner ear is not working. So this device is basically like a high-tech electrode. So an operation is done and an electrode is put, it's curved. Yeah, it's a curved electrode, tiny, this size. It's put in the inner ear. So it bypasses the inner ear and stimulates the nerve directly. So that the moment you put it and after it is healed, after a month, you switch it on. There's something we call switch on. That's the first time that baby will know this sensation called sound. Because it hasn't heard
Must
sound.
be amazing looking at the reaction.
Yeah, we call it learning to hear.
Yeah.
So when they first hear, they don't know what it is.
Because it's a foreign.
It's a foreign sensation.
Yeah.
Then slowly they begin to associate, just like a newborn would. And the children who are implanted early, after 4 or 5 years, they play instruments, they sing, they dance, they are indistinguishable from a normal hearing person.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So this experience again, I can imagine the parents' reactions, the child just seeing them sort of that sensory experience, like what is this? Yeah, that must be quite rewarding. from pediatricians to whatever you do. There's always that. I guess that's what pushes you on in the medical field, right?
Absolutely. That's what, it gives you the kick which you
Yeah.
want.
Okay.
Because we now have, many patients.
Yeah.
And initially, we used to almost cheer when this used to happen. Used to wait with bated breath. Is it going to work or not
Yeah.
going to work?
So this implant then stays with them
Yeah, it's a lifelong implant.
But you just have you
Yeah,
should have
there's an internal implant which the patient never sees.
yeah.
But the external processor is like a computer which processes sound, and converts it into electrical signals, and by transcutaneous conduction.
Yes.
Yeah, by induction.
Induction.
There's no connection.
Okay.
It's by induction. Yeah.
It's funny how technology is going. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, especially with the advent of AI, the way things are changing, it's amazing to see what medical technology.
People say, Sajid, that even cochlear implantation, as much as cutting edge that it is, maybe in 30, 40 years' time, the biggest thing on the horizon is stem cells. Stem cells are cells that can become anything. Now, if one can control stem cells, so may come a time, maybe your kids or your kids' kids, that generation, if there's a problem, you inject stem cells into the inner ear and they make the inner ear work.
It's quite heavily practiced in South America. And I was told, just through watching podcasts and seeing stuff online, in America, it's quite regulated as well. Whereas in other markets, it's a bit more open. So they have had a lot more success. Is it pros and cons? I'm not sure if it's your specific.
It's not yet entered our mainstream.
Yes.
It has shown significant success in muscular areas. For example, when someone have heart issues, you can inject stem cells which can make heart muscle.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's very strict because it has to go test. The test of time has to take place.
It has to take
place. You can't just use new technologies are never easy to introduce, and because people misuse them. That's the whole issue.
Because you've been in the industry now quite some time, how would you say Kenya fares globally, on a global scale? Our medical facilities, our medical professionals, just because you're in depth, you're into the industry, how would you fare us? How would you rate us?
First of all, I think let's look at it regionally.
Yeah.
First of all, regionally, I think we are a beacon of advancement in our region.
Yes.
We get a lot of local medical tourism. Myself, my colleagues, we regularly have patients from our surrounding countries.
Correct.
And and in every field, people have reached cutting edge. So there'll be someone who's doing it in neurology, someone who's doing it in cardiology, like we are doing it in ear, nose, and throat.
Yes.
So we are certainly part of that advancement. The only issue is that, our population has grown a lot.
Oh.
And economically, the affordability of anything that is cutting edge becomes a problem, Sajid.
Quite expensive. Yeah.
And so it has to be within reach of the person who needs it. So I think the demand-supply relationships are certainly something that will always be an issue.
Yeah.
But I think Kenya is doing very well if you look at it regionally.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite true from a medical tourism perspective, which was even a term I was recently introduced to, is East and Central Africa and even the Indian Ocean islands. A lot of them come to visit Nairobi for a lot of their medical procedures. So it's quite good to see that we've advanced.
Yes, absolutely.
That considerably. There's also one of the points. So between now you entering the ENT, there's music which you're going to touch base into. You also became a lecturer at the university. Did that happen much further along in your career?
It happened pretty much at the same time. When I finished my ENT surgery, I wanted to remain in Nairobi and pursue academics as well as simply work. So I started teaching in the university as well.
How old were you at that time?
I was 30.
So balancing all that family, so you have a kid on the way,
yes.
All the advancements you're making, music. How is it balancing all that? Did you ever just want to take some time to yourself? And I'm coming in from this perspective. So I'm not yet married. I'm a single man. But just running the podcast, Kim is like my child. I'm trying to balance this stuff. It gets overwhelming at times, and sometimes you just need to step out and try and find your north again. How are you balancing all this?
This question has been asked to me several times, and I have two answers for them. And these are answers from my heart. Yeah. The first answer is something that is more general.
Yeah.
That if you really love something, you really want to do something, you will make time for it. Full stop.
That's true.
If you don't like something enough, you'll have 1,000 excuses not to do it. And you just need one reason to do it.
I like that.
So I believe it. I practice it. That's one issue. But the second issue is, I think all of us, whichever profession we follow, we are all jugglers. There's no one who has his life mapped out for him.
No.
You have to juggle. You have to juggle your personal life, your professional life, your social life, your interest life. And I tell people the balance between profession and passion. You had better find that balance very early in life, because some people deprive themselves of their passions. And then they say, oh God, I wish I had done this. I'm very against bucket lists. See, bucket lists means that, oh, now I'm retired and I need a bucket list. No. Your bucket list should be part of your life.
Correct.
Why should you wait when you're almost, hobbling and limping, and then you start doing bungee jumping? If you want to bungee jump now.
Yeah.
So I think one balances because one wants to balance. Yes, of course, there are trade-offs. You only have 24 hours.
You only do, yeah.
And there are trade-offs, but you need, I think, if you allocate enough time, like I have slots. My wife always teases me on these slots. In fact, since I've mentioned my wife, you see, all these journey, Sajid, and you're still single. And I think it was Rumi who said, someone asked him that, is it important to reach the destination, or is the journey as important? He's saying neither. He's saying, what do you mean neither? He's saying it's whom you go with.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. That's a good one. I want to steal that.
I think it's Rumi. We can double check. It may not be Rumi. And
it's who you go with. Right?
Yeah. And you see, if you have a partner who's your friend, who understands, and you understand that partner, then you walk the path together.
Yeah.
And you support each other.
Gee.
One day you are down and he or she supports you, and vice versa. So I think that's very important. And I'm sure one day you'll be married, and I pray and wish that you get someone who says, yeah, he loves podcasts, so I'm going to support him. And if she loves dancing, better support her.
Yeah.
Let her dance.
True.
You do your podcasts. So I think that aspect of surrounding yourself with people who nurture you rather than inhibit you. People you can classify people into negative and positive, but they're also for a lot of gray. But generally speaking, a lot of people are nurturing people.
Yes. So do you find, so sorry to cut you short, do you find your social circle helped you achieve a lot of these goals that you set? Was it more your family, or did you ever have to cut off friends?
Not cut off. I think you end up, it's a sieve. Life is a sieve. And if the person is not your type of person, he will be sieved. He or she will get sieved, because you can't just fake relationships. And you shouldn't.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. You have to be open.
You hear that, Kim? Life's a sieve. I love that. No wonder you're a musician and artist. Okay, so that actually helps, because, again, sometimes what I noticed is very early on, especially in school times, you have like 20, 30, 40 friends. And that number just kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Then you just have those core people that stay with you and believe in you. And it's right. I like that Rumi quote. It's about the person who you go with, right?
Absolutely.
That's 100% important. So now you've told us about the medical industry, how you sort of propelled there, balancing a family, now coming into music. You mentioned that you were coached. I have here, there was Ustad Bashir Butt and Gianni Gurshan Singh.
Gulsharan
Singh. So
Gyani
those were the
Gulsharan.
those were the two
To
gentlemen
start with, yes.
who
Yes.
started off. And sort of how was your exposure into them? Was it through introduction? Did you know of them through their artistic works?
Yeah, as you know, Nairobi is multicultural, multi-religion.
Yeah.
We hardly ever look at the person's color and creed and religion. We are just Kenyans.
Yes, correct.
So we have had a lot of friends who were from the Sikh community.
Gee.
Very close friends, I must say. I mean, people like family. They're like family.
Something about Singhs and Punjabi friends. My best friends are Punjabis.
Yes.
If they're your friends, they're your best of friends.
No, it's the culture. Yeah?
It's the culture.
See, my original culture is Punjabi.
Punjabi.
And
Ji.
Singhs are Punjabi.
Punjabi,
So your culture is the same.
Culture is the same. Ji.
Maybe you're a different religion, but who talks much about religion?
Exactly.
So we had common friends who were from the Sikh community, and when they realized I was inclined towards music, they told me that if you want to learn, why don't you go to this gentleman? He takes on students, and he will teach you what basics of classical music. So he planted the seed. And once the seed is planted, you see, let me tell you, Sajid, now these days it's easier. 2 clicks of the button, you can have a master class from a top composer because it's there.
That's true.
It wasn't like that in the 80s. I mean, if even books were read, musical cassettes, those days we were using cassettes, those 2-spool things.
2-spool thing, yeah.
And very rare. We used to beg people, get me this music and get me this music. And then this revolution of internet.
You didn't even have the internet.
There was no internet. Absolutely no internet.
We have information overflow today.
Yeah.
Anything you need, you're right.
It's there. It's how you use it. So those days were different. So even to get educated, you had limited resource.
Gee.
These days you can sit at home, and if you're serious, you can get a degree because there are online courses.
Yeah, that's very true.
And good from reputable universities, and
there's nothing stopping you.
Nothing stopping you. So it was very difficult to get a teacher. So I'm eternally thankful to my first teacher. He started it off. And because I went back to university, and medical school, of course, has its demands.
Yeah.
I couldn't carry on with formal lessons, but I remained in touch with him. And all these years. And then,
but you kept practicing.
Oh, certainly. And then I think once I qualified, and now you start earning, you have a little pocket money now, you can buy some books, and you can buy some records. So I then proceeded with my self-teaching.
Gee.
And then this I think was not in the little write-up I sent you, or perhaps it was. In the early 90s, I was introduced again through common friends to the late Basharat Khan Sahab. Not Bashir, but Basharat Khan. Now, Basharat Khan was a celebrated ustad meaning maestro, of sitar music.
Sitar, okay. The instrument.
The sitar.
The traditional
He
instrument.
lived in Kenya, but he was the flag bearer of a musical. It's in Urdu, it's called Gharana, but it's really a school of music.
Yes.
And that he was the flag bearer, and he used to live here. Single man, dedicated to music, and he used to teach my cousin music, sitar. So I wanted to learn classical music. By that time, my first teacher had emigrated. So I learned sitar for 2 years. I learned sitar, and in fact, I think he made a huge difference in my life. I understood, or at least I thought, I dipped my hand into this infinite ocean of music.
Do you have pictures and all from you at these times where we can put up over here?
Well, one could fish them out, I suppose.
I think that would be nice as a visual cue, yeah?
Yeah, we could fish them out. It'll take some doing.
Kim will take notes of what's needed, like where we can put you.
Yeah, because you see, now everything is on my phone.
Yeah.
The last 10 years I can give you now.
Everything is digital.
But before then, it would take some fishing out, but it's possible.
No problem.
So I learned sitar from him. And I think he up to now, I have my notes of those lessons. I refer to them even now. And by that time, the internet revolution had started.
This was
Mid
now
90s, mid 90s, mid
Gee,
90s,
gee,
and early 2000s.
gee.
So then you have more opportunity to
To
learn.
So your style of music then with the albums you release later, is
Yeah.
it ghazal, geet, semi-classical? Because
It's a bit of all of what you've mentioned.
You've dabbled into quite a
Yeah,
lot, right?
if you ask me which is your favorite type of music, it is ghazal.
So ghazal, there was a famous singer, my uncle Riaz used to love ghazal
Must be
music.
Mehdi Hassan,
Him was one. There was Jagjit
Singh,
Singh.
and Ghulam Ali.
Ah,
These are the three, doyens of ghazal
So around the
singing.
same time you were doing it, I remember Friday nights, I'd walk into his room and Jagjit Singh would be playing.
Yeah.
So he used to smoke cigarettes. He used to
Oh.
enjoy cigarettes and his tea, and used to play ghazal music on Friday night. And I'd sit with him, and you just 1-2 hours. I'm playing on the floor, and the music is going on.
See, ghazal is a poetic form.
Yeah,
Ghazal was not primarily a musical form. It was a poetical form popularized probably about 200 years ago by people such as Mir, Momin, Ghalib. You may have heard some of these names, who wrote primarily in Persian and then Urdu,
okay.
and a lot of others who wrote in Punjabi.
Gee.
So the ghazal is basically they're two-line couplets, and they don't have to be related to each other. They're two lines of thought,
Gee.
but they have a similar endings, a rhyming ending. So that's what makes it a little one pocket,
Yeah.
or packet of a poem. And then this started getting into music probably about 100 years ago. And then it was popularized by certain very, very big names because they brought classical music into ghazal.
Gee.
And you may have heard such names like Begum Akhtar, Mehdi Hassan, and then more later Ghulam Ali, Jagjit Singh, Pankaj Udas. So these people brought the ghazal to the masses.
So this ghazal, because we have a lot of, again, local viewers, if you're to look at blues, like the blues music that B.B. King does, those type, they're again, not very similar, but they're very mellow. They're very
Generally mellow.
Generally, they talk about problems. They talk about love.
A lot of love.
A lot of love.
A lot of love. The whole, they say the word ghazal comes from ghazal, from Arabic. And they say when, this is the poetical meaning of a ghazal, when a gazal's heart is pierced by a hunter's arrow, the thoughts and the cry that comes out of that gazelle should be the heart of a ghazal.
Wow.
So it should be emotional.
Very emotional.
So there's a lot of emotion and yes, love.
Thinking about your old flames.
New flames. But the modern ghazal is about everything.
Yeah.
It's about society, about politics, about philosophy. So the modern ghazal writers write on everything.
Did Jagjit ever come to Kenya to play?
Oh yes, he's come here several times. I had the good opportunity to listen to him, I think in the year, somewhere I think 2000 something.
Gee, he passed away quite young as well.
He wasn't young. I think he was in his 70s.
Okay,
Well,
okay.
Young is a relative word.
Relative word, yeah.
But he, I think, if you say one name that probably most people will remember, because he modernized ghazal. He made it simple. His choice to the masses. The lyrics he chose were simple. The tunes he chose were easily memorized, and he was a master composer. And then he revolutionized the presentation of ghazal.
It's funny because, whenever I think about a peaceful scene, I always reflect back to my uncle listening to ghazal music, Jagjit. Very quiet, very peaceful, in your thoughts. Him having his cigars, having his chai. It's, again, after a long, heavy day of work, especially in the IT field, just going back to that. Even going back to some of your music, it's very peaceful. There's meaning to it, especially understanding it. You have to have very good linguistic capabilities to understand.
You need to get the lyrics.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you formalize your training under these gentlemen.
Yes, yes. I didn't mention my last teacher who passed on just about 2 years ago, whose
Okay.
name was Ustad Bashir Bhatt.
Okay.
It would
Yes.
be a
Yes.
crime for me not to
Yes.
mention.
Yes. Yes.
He was, of course, a classical maestro, but he was also a very accomplished Ghazal singer.
Yes.
And I learned a lot from him. And we recently, last year,
Was he
had
Kenyan? Was he Kenyan?
Yes, he was. I'm not sure whether he was a born Kenyan, but he spent most of his life in Kenya.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And last year we had a memorial for him. All his students. We had a very, very successful show. I think it was April last year.
Right.
Yeah, in
But
his memory.
it's keeping his memory alive.
Oh,
right?
certainly.
So, when did you go? Because you obviously published albums as well, live albums. When was your first release? And how old were you when you?
Yeah, this was in 1998. Yeah, so I was, 36? You see, when you're working and family and stuff, yeah, I mean, inevitably, your passion takes a second burner,
It has
back
to, yeah.
burner.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, you have to feed your family. You have to, make some kind of a name. I mean, I have not earned money from music. For me, it's a hobby. So you can't give it so much time unless you make it your profession.
Yeah, then that means fully committing
That's
to it.
fully committed, 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Then, so I was 36 that time, and our first album was something that we all believed in. 4 of us, there's 2 of my sisters, were both doctors, and our dear friend who was in the pharmaceutical business. So happened that we were all from in the medical profession, and our album was called Heritage and Melody.
Heritage and Melody.
Now, Heritage and Melody was made on those spools. And you'll be
cassettes.
intrigued to know where we recorded it. I don't know whether, have you heard of them mushrooms?
The mushrooms, yeah.
They're the ones, Hakuna Matata.
Yes.
They're the ones who made Hakuna Matata.
Yes, the mushrooms.
Them mushrooms had a studio a kilometer from here, Madaraka Estate. I don't know whether it still exists. You should check it.
That'll be interesting to check.
Yeah, and they're friends. John Katana Harrison is my friend now.
So
they're not a group anymore.
Yeah.
So we recorded this at their studio, which was part digital, part analog. And if you're in the sound business, that time they were still using the big spools. And there was a new type of recording which had just come out. It was called DAT, small digital auditory tape.
Okay.
And so we recorded our music then.
And what was the process of sort of recording it? How long did it take?
There was very little, post sound editing. There was no voice tuning.
No voice tuning. Yeah.
There was no tuning. You sing and it goes like that. Okay,
Yeah.
you can change the settings. There was no tuning those days. And
No auto-tune.
no. There was no auto-tune. Is last 15 years?
Yeah.
And so we did. And if you've gone through some of our the YouTube channel,
Yeah. And we'll link everything in the description.
One song was called Kenya Zindabad.
You did an English version and a Kiswahili version.
Kiswahili and Urdu version.
Kiswahili and Urdu version. I heard that,
It actually, Kenya Zindabad means Kenya live forever.
दिल से अजीज है और लगता है जान से प्यारा
दिल से अजीज है और लगता है जान से प्यारा
हम तो
है केन्या के
और के
Zindabad the root is Arabic,
Yeah.
and in Lamu, it's used.
It's actually one of your highest viewed videos.
It is
Yes,
actually.
Yeah.
And we did it because we felt for Kenya.
Your sisters were also on that. So your sisters also at the same time were pursuing
Their own careers. Yes.
But the medical passion was the musical side of it was embellished in all of you.
Absolutely.
So when you decided, like, how I'm thinking about how the creative process for you works when you're developing a song with them. So do you all sit down? Do you spew
As you know, I write. I started writing in my early 20s. I started writing in my language, Urdu and Punjabi.
Gee.
and writing songs and ghazals and small poems. And this particular song, of course, we got it translated into Kiswahili. And so when I write a song, I often then make a tune for it.
So this is all you do it yourself?
I start the process.
Gee.
And then when we decide that we're going to do an album, so I give them, let's say, 10 songs. I say, listen to these. Which one do you think you want to enjoy, or which one? So they listen to it, to the sort of the pilot tune and the pilot, lyrics.
Yeah.
And then after listening, they say, I think we'll go for these ones.
Okay.
So then we work on those, refine them. And this was exactly what took place the first time, 1998.
How long did that entire start to finish process take?
Well, easily a year and a half.
Okay.
Our last one, unfortunately, really dragged because of COVID. It almost took 3 years. Because
This was the show you did
just
a couple of months ago.
Yeah, just a few months ago. Our last album.
So that took
called
3-4
Ik
years.
Umr. Ik Umr, meaning one life.
Yeah, we'll link again everything in the description.
Yeah, sure.
So that obviously now because of COVID, accessibility.
Yes.
But you mentioned that music really does not have money. Is there
It does have money, but not for us.
not for you?
We didn't do it professionally.
But no, because the reason I'm asking is you also do a lot for charity as well.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we could talk more about that.
This, since you're starting from the platform of music, our first album was, at that time, we dedicated it to a young girl charity. It was to support the young girl. That was their theme. And at that time, I can tell you, this is 1998. I think you can easily multiply. If you know what the dollar was that time, we raised over 2.4 or 2.5 million shillings at that time, which was a lot of money in 1998.
That must have been a lot.
For that particular. So we partnered with a small foundation. And in fact, even the second one, we partnered with another foundation. This last one was our family project. We just did it for ourselves.
Gee. Yeah. So do you find that being a musician helps you be a better doctor or vice versa? Do you think there's interplay? Maybe your meticulous attention to detail as a medical professional sort of dabs over?
I don't know. I think certainly helps me to remain balanced. When does one take a break? For me, I take breaks during the day many times. Like I'm working, and between one patient and the other, I may actually be going on some YouTube channel and listening for 3 minutes to something. And that, the adage, a change is as good as a rest.
Yes.
And I totally believe it. And that 3 minutes of totally switching the channel, when you switch back, you're fresh.
Yeah, you're completely fresh.
Unless, you
like
can't be work. The other thing is how often do you sharpen your axe? You can't keep chopping wood.
You can't keep chopping wood, yeah.
You have to sit and shop.
Yeah, sometimes you have to work on the... No, I appreciate that. Yeah. Do you ever get recognized for your music? Do you ever patients stop you and be like...
Yeah, all the time.
I've heard.
All the time. I mean, there's one funny story I may as well, now that you've mentioned. You see, there was once a patient of mine who mentioned that I heard you're into music. And this was again during the time of cassettes and CDs.
Yeah.
When internet music hadn't fully taken off. So I said, I'm looking for this album. Do you know where you can get it? So I said, actually, I do. And there was a shop, no need to mention names. And I wrote the shop's name on my prescription pad, literally, and I gave it to my client.
Yeah.
So time went on, and one day I happened to pass by that shop. It was in Diamond Plaza.
Gee.
And I saw my prescription stuck on the window with the shop's name written there.
That's amazing.
So I went in because, as you know, now still it's not that strict, but we are not allowed to advertise. Okay. This can be construed to be that I'm advertising myself.
Correct.
Yeah?
Correct.
So I went in. So I said, you've put some doctor's prescription out there. He's saying, yeah, that doctor is recommending our shop, I told him, I'm the doctor. See, really? We are now friends, by the way.
Okay.
And he said, I said, yeah, but I appreciate it. And it's really nice. It's a story to tell my other patients, but
Yeah.
please take it off because people will think I'm advertising.
I see what you
Yeah.
mean. I see what you mean. You have to be very careful again, yeah? Sort of now I want to touch on another hobby of yours. Actually, my cousin Sahil, who's also a medical professional, is cricket.
Yes.
I mean, love for cricket. How did that start? Do I need to ask? It's part of our culture, but you've done so much for it.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
maybe let's talk about
Perhaps
that.
not as much as I could have, or perhaps should have. I was introduced to cricket, of course, like everyone else in my primary school days,
Gee.
tennis ball and a thin little bat. And then in secondary school, you learn the ropes. But somehow I never dedicated myself too much to cricket because, as you know, during my teens, I was playing chess. But when I came to university, I restarted playing cricket. So we had a university team called Cougars. And I later on headed the team, and we played a lot of cricket during my university side. And then when I qualified, and I again took a break because life becomes busy. Cricket takes time.
Yeah, it does.
Takes a lot of time. And then there was a tournament that took place in Kenya in 1996. And the tournament was televised live.
Okay.
And it had a huge impact generally on Kenyan cricket, as well as on the prominence of Kenya. And I sort of got back into cricket. So I joined a cricket club, started playing club cricket.
Was it
seriously.
thoroughly? Where
No,
was
no,
this?
no. I joined the Nairobi club and played
Nairobi.
cricket for Congoni's cricket club.
Okay.
So I played several years. I even captained one of their sides. And but at club level, I was never good enough to crack into the, international club
Gee.
level. But as a really enjoyed. And then in 2002, I realized there were a lot of people in my boat. Now, which boat is this? A boat of, they're in the medical profession. They don't have time, but they love cricket and they want to play cricket. So I talked to a few of my friends. I said, let's form a
The
medics
yeah.
cricket club. And we formed it.
When was
And
this?
2002.
Okay.
And we got together, started playing mainly friendly cricket. Friendly
Gee.
in the sense that formal, but friendly.
Friendly, yeah.
And not tournament.
Like you'd meet once a week or once a month?
We used to practice once a week and
Gee.
probably twice a month have formal matches.
Okay.
So it worked out extremely well and it's still going on.
Yeah, that's
And
surprising.
you mentioned Sahil. Sahil
Yeah.
is an active member when he was a student.
Yes.
Since from year 1 to year 6, he was our player. And now he's a qualified doctor. So he's now taking on more responsibility.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so that's a legacy now that obviously will continue because they seem so passionate about it and they're so organized. And that's because of a few people who thought about this.
Yes.
That's maybe a way you obviously your teachings have had an influence, but now your hobbies and your passions have also reflected on this, yeah?
See, I think it is good to have also some type of a physical sport. I encourage young people, I mean, fitness, mental fitness, physical fitness, social fitness. I think we need to be fit in all those spheres.
It can also, I guess, help with endorphins and you feel you feel completely relaxed after playing a hard game.
Yeah, not when you lose though.
Which is the toughest team you played against?
We've had many games. One of, I think, that hurt us a lot, I think the male ego is easily bruised. Many years ago, we used to play in a division which also included the Kenyan ladies cricket team. The Kenyan ladies cricket team. Yeah. Brilliant young ladies, but they're ladies. And obviously they have physically, it's like, that's why you have male games and female games.
Correct. Yeah.
You can't compete on.
You can't compete on that, yeah.
So we played against them and they beat us. They beat the medics. And up to now, we tease some of the people who failed during that time,
Oh my God.
And in fact, our current captain during that time, he actually didn't perform too well. So we tease him up to today. But it's okay,
It happens.
It happens.
Maybe they let them lose on purpose.
No. They were very good.
They're very good.
Played
Not
very
take
well.
anything away from them.
They played very well.
Amazing.
And it happened. But No, there are games and it's a game after
It's a
all.
game, yeah.
Eh,
What about chess? Because I know you played chess quite a lot. Did you ever take that internationally? Did you ever represent Ken? Like,
Chess, yeah. I played chess for about 10 years from my, when I was 12 till I was about 20, 21. And I devoured every book in the Macmillan Library. That time there was no internet, yeah.
there's no internet, yeah.
So Macmillan Library had a chess section. I read probably 90% of the books there on chess. And it's a long story, but it's a true story. So I became a member of the Kenya Chess Club. And I taught my father chess. And we used to go
Really?
together, yeah. He didn't know chess. So at that time, I was taught by a friend of mine. And then I taught him. And then we both
You should pick
progressed.
it up, yeah.
Yeah. So we used to go to the Nairobi Chess Club and play. So I was 13 that time. And I went early because I used to finish school at 3:30 or something. And I used to just quickly go to the
Chess club.
This was next to St. John's, just next to the Parliament. And so I was the first person there. So gentleman, a very tall, imposing gentleman with spectacles came and said, do you know how to play? I said, I know a bit. So I played and I think he was taking it easy. I beat him. So he looked at me and said, he's saying, you want to play again? I said, yeah. So I played again, and this time he played. He was serious. And I beat him again. Okay. So he's saying, who are you? So I told him, I'm so-and-so. He's saying, where did you learn chess? So I just learned on my own, and I've learned from friends. Have you played anyone? Who else do you know in the Nairobi Chess Club? So I gave him a few names. My cousin was a ranked Kenya player. And I told him I play with him sometimes. Yeah. He's saying, oh, do you beat him sometimes? I told him, yeah. I beat him sometimes and sometimes he beats me. So this gentleman, I didn't know, but he was number 4 Kenya chess player at that time. All right? I didn't know that. At that time, I didn't know. So he held my hand that day and he took me saying, this boy has to play. There's no way he can beat me 2 games and he's not playing for Kenya. I can't be number 4.
Wow.
Okay? So I played for Kenya against Uganda when I was 13. So one of my... I think I was too small. You don't realize the significance of these things, you know.
I mean, 13-year-old
Yeah, I was
playing.
just 13. And my opponent was 15. He was, I still remember his name. He was a Ugandan. And, they're boards. The way chess works as a team is you have boards. You have board 1, board 2, board 3, board 3. And so we were on the last board.
Correct.
And he was the last board for Uganda. I was the last board for Kenya. So he beat me on one day, Saturday, and I beat him on Sunday. So I got 1 point for Kenya. So it was pretty good.
And you didn't pursue it further then?
Yeah, this is what happens. This is sometimes you give, how many things can you do? I played a lot. I promoted chess. I promoted chess in my school.
Yeah.
Played a lot of school tournaments and popularized it in my sphere of influence. But I did not have the time. I did not. I wanted
Dean,
to
you
study.
might have reached grandmaster level if you.
No, but then you have to be a professional. Yeah. I mean, for a Kenyan in the 70s, you think you could run a family on chess?
No.
I doubt it very much. Maybe now you can. Even now, it's very difficult to be a professional chess player.
But in hindsight, if you look back at it, if you had given it your all, do you think you would have got to grandmaster status?
I think this speculating. I don't know.
My good friend Eric, who also does a podcast, says in hindsight is always 2020. We all 2020 vision. Everything seems clearer back then.
No, I think I played a lot. I did. I don't think I could have given it that much time because I knew I had to get into a profession.
Which makes sense.
Just like now, someone can be a professional cricketer, even in Kenya. But in those days, everyone was a part-time cricketer.
You couldn't do it full time.
You couldn't do it to earn a living.
Even till today, some people don't do it fully.
Tough.
It's very tough.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. It's competitive. More people have access to it. Resources are more scarce. You'd think because sports are more open, there is more opportunity. But there's also a lot more competition in all these
No,
aspects.
I mean, you see, it depends on which sport it is. Like obviously, our Kenyan runners, it's sort of a one-man show.
Yeah.
So if you're good enough, you can earn. But sports such as tennis, badminton, cricket, even football, I mean, it's difficult to earn
Very
a living.
difficult. Very
Yeah.
difficult.
It's a bit difficult to begin with.
Okay.
Regional country.
Sure. Dr. Dean, I had a note over here. There's a charity called Giants Africa. Could you tell me more about that and what your involvement is?
Yeah. Giants is a charity group, much in the mode of Lions and Rotary Club.
Okay.
And I was first introduced to Giants very early on in the early 90s. And I was involved actively for about 25 years with them. And Giants is an acronym. It's generosity, integrity, action, nobility, truthfulness, and service. I
That's
still
nice.
remember.
That's nice.
And so we had several groups in Kenya that time. So basically, you do service. So whether it's medical service, whether it is education, whether it is supporting less fortunate of our society, and various projects, ranging from providing wheelchairs to people, doing charity operations, doing building, basic schools, lots of such things. So I was actively involved. I was chairman of our group at that time, after a few years. And then I reached the Africa level, and that's the time then I had done a lot of years. And you have to let the next generation take over.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So maybe now talking about your future, we can start within the medical industry. What are your future plans? Obviously, you're a very well-established known quantity in our industry. Everyone knows you here. What's next for Dr. Dean?
Yeah, I think, you see, no doubt, if someone asks me what is the one thing in your career do you think you've done, it would be cochlear implantation. Cochlear implantation is very expensive.
It is. Huh?
Both the device is very expensive, and we have always tried to minimize all the ancillary costs. I would like to see how we can bring down the price. In fact, after years of lobbying, actually the NHF now, I pray the Shia and Shif would be with us. They do subsidize. I think one of my can say hopes and also intentions is to make it accessible to everyone.
Right.
That is certainly at the top of my list. And you have to remain current, Sajid, and relevant in any profession.
True.
You cannot stagnate. The world is too fast. And if you don't keep reading, don't be what we often refer to a lifelong learner, you will become irrelevant. And you must maintain your learning in every field. Certainly, if you're in an academic field, you must pursue those lines which keeps you current. Learn from your peers, learn from your juniors, and keep yourself up to date in your profession. So someone comes to you, he's not just coming to you because you have 30 years experience, which is fine.
Yes.
It means a lot. But he should know that this person is also up to date.
Correct.
He's not going to tell me to do something which is 30 years old, unless it's current.
Correct. No, I agree.
So I think certainly, I think from my professional aspirations perspective, I had a good run, but maybe I'm in the last 1/3 of my academic and professional career.
Yeah.
And I think I would try and maintain your relevance, and people can come to you for advice.
True.
Yeah.
True. So speaking of relevance and sort of having a future outlook, with the introduction of AI has been quite significant, and the notion is within the next 10 to 15 years, AI will be fully embellished in all functions of life, even replacing jobs. I'm not sure what your exposure is, but obviously you're exposed to now a lot of medical technologies that are coming in. Will AI really change things for us within the medical space? Is that
I
something
mean,
that you
certainly,
could say?
I think there's a lot of paranoia going on.
Yeah.
I mean, what is artificial intelligence anyway? I mean, the moment you had a smartphone in your hand, you were already using artificial
Correct.
intelligence. Yeah?
Correct, yeah.
It's just that the quality of that has reached a stage where it has become more interactive, more subjective, and gives you faster, more reliable results.
Yes.
And let me just pick on ChatGPT. Yeah, everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people have ChatGPT on their phones.
Yes.
Now, I tell my students this, that suppose you have a problem and your mind can't get around that problem. What would you do? Forget about ChatGPT. How do you solve it? You're saying probably call a friend
Correct.
or call an expert in that field. That maybe if it's a social problem, call a good friend. If it's a medical problem, call a doctor who's a friend. And that's exactly what we should look at AI as a highly efficient, qualified friend.
Yeah, I
Let
appreciate
it not rule you. So when I use ChatGPT regularly. So when I punch a query, I'm not going to believe every word, but I'm going to use it as a wise man's advice.
Yeah, exactly.
And many fields of ours, Sajid, lend themselves to AI. One big field is radiology. See, radiology, when a certain scan or MRI is taken, the images can be fed, and you can have 1 million images which can be fed, and the AI can be taught that to look for that.
Correct.
So it
Because
is
it's a
not-
language learning model.
yeah. So it will learn
Yeah.
and it will give you very accurate reports. But as to replace a very senior UN client of mine, we had this chat, and she told me, I said, are you worried about this in your field? And she's saying, no. Saying you won't lose your job to AI, but you'll lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI. To
love
me,
that.
that was a beautiful statement.
100%.
So all of us, we need to embrace it, make them our friends. Don't look at it as a rival. For God's sake, what is it? I mean, it's the human mind that has made AI.
Correct.
Well, I'm not daunted by it or intimidated by it. Not at all.
Yeah, I heard there is the notion that, using AI is cheating. I completely disagree with that. It's like saying mobile phone is cheating.
Yeah, you have to walk to the
you have
person's
to walk
house
to
and
the
talk
person's
to him.
house.
Yeah.
It just amplifies, makes your life a lot easier. And again, it learns from the inputs you give it.
Yes.
So within the medical technology space, as you were saying, for the scans, if you feed it millions and millions and millions of scans, you can then use it as a tool to assess your clients'
Absolutely.
health. So why not, right?
Sure. It's like a knife. I mean, when the first knife was invented, I mean, I'm sure people thought, oh God, you can slit people's throats with it.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can also save a life with a knife.
Yeah.
So I think the same applies to any new technology. Sajid, when we saw computers coming in, we
Yes.
didn't. My first computer was a Apple, which you had to, just to load it, you had to put 3 floppy disks. And then one letter used to, the first Apple, you had to load with floppy disks, and then you press, and then a long while later, something happens there. Yeah. So we were afraid of computers.
Yes.
We said, oh dear, when
What
will
is
we
going on?
ever, these computers are going to take our, no, we are all carrying computers in our pockets.
Just amplifies.
Yes, so I don't think one should worry. I think we should learn, embrace it, use it in our professions, in our passions. I am not at all worried about AI.
I appreciate that insight. In fact, I share similar insights into it.
Yeah.
From a career and job perspective, this is an expression, this is sort of a saying I like going back to is, don't focus on digging for the gold, which is AI. Focus on selling the pickaxes to get, because that's where the money is. So you have to have abilities to learn how to implement the AI for others to use. And that's where the future of business and everything is involved. Exactly like you said.
Yeah.
AI is just going to make your life easier, but the people who understand how to use it will stand out from the crowd.
See, the other thing is that people say that, oh, students can cheat with AI. I mean,
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
yeah, and people do. And even before AI, you can
Yeah,
even,
yeah.
plagiarism has always been a problem.
Yeah.
And as plagiarism became an issue, as the internet became more and more wider, plagiarism became worse. So there are tools that have been developed. There are apps and programs which pick up
We
plagiarism.
combat that, yeah.
Yeah. And similarly, you would have apps that that can pick blatant AI usage, because there has to be a human in between. If I am teaching a master's student a topic, if he simply goes to ChatGPT and says, "What is
types in
this?"
the prompt,
and
yeah.
and just sends it to me, I'll have the tool to check it. And if it comes out as completely, I'll
90%
tell him,
or
"Look,
something,
this
yeah,
is,
this is-
where is you?"
Where is you?
So
Yeah.
they have even, I think there are certain guidelines that this much is allowed. Perhaps 10% of copying is allowed, or copying in inverted commas, and perhaps not more than 10%. So students should be encouraged to use it ethically.
So it's like a plagiarism checker as well.
Yeah,
that-
yeah, sure,
So the
sure.
universities have that where you upload
yeah,
your
yeah.
assignments, it checks how much is actually yours. It's very smartly developed tools to help to combat this.
Absolutely. So I think the student needs to know that my work is going to be checked.
Yeah.
And we encourage the student, and of course the same thing happens at secondary school level. People are going to use these tools.
100%.
So just tell them, look, use it, but put yourself in between.
Correct.
Don't be a copy typist. Put your mind in between
Put your
this.
mind in between, yeah.
Otherwise you'll be caught and then you won't go through. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Do you think it will make lazier doctors? Because research was obviously a huge part of being a medical professional, studying something, doing lots of man hours. But now, if the fact that I know I don't need to go through a book, I can just type
Make
it in.
us more efficient.
That's
so you can, if a person could generate 10 papers a year, now he'll generate 50. I think it's going to make us much more
I
efficient.
appreciate that you look at the positive side
I
of
think
it.
we should look at it positively. Yes, you will always have people who will use it badly.
On both sides, yeah.
That's the human race for
That's
us.
the human race.
But even before AI, we used to go to Google.
Yes,
to
yes.
get the document.
Absolutely. It's just a different level now.
Correct. So, Dr. Dean, if you look at your students now, because you do advise a lot of young professionals, a lot of cohorts work with you, they look up to you. What is maybe some bits of advice you would give them following your lengthy career in both the medical field and the musical field? Like from balancing passion, family, what someone's looking up to you and say, Dr. Dean, what do I do?
Yeah.
What road do I walk on? I want to be like you.
I give
What
a
would-
lecture,
Yeah.
Sajid, and when students come in, I still teach undergraduates as well as postgraduates. There's one of the lectures I give in which we talk about the balance between profession and passion. And the first thing I tell them is that you must be very clear about what you're doing in the university. Talking about a young person, it doesn't have to be university. You can talk about any young person. That the first thing is how am I going to put food on the table? You have to be serious in life.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. It's not just going to happen. It's not going to, some trees not going to sprout in your garden. So you need to know your priority.
Yeah.
How am I going to do that?
Do
one?
that, yeah.
So once you have said, okay, I want to be a civil engineer, say, fine, then focus. I think most of your time you should give to that profession, to your vocation.
Vocation, yes.
Yeah. And then do not ignore other things that are brewing in your mind. If you wanted to dance, if you wanted to sing, you wanted to play tennis, you wanted to play balls, anything, do it. Do it now. Because there is enough time. And I just what I said earlier, if you want it enough, you'll create time for it.
Time for it.
So I tell young people that prioritize, but do not ignore your passions completely. You will suddenly reach 50 something, say, oh God, I never did this, which is okay.
And
You
time
can still
goes
do
by
it. You
like
can
this,
still
you know?
do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know people who go start learning, playing guitar, dancing, sports, well into their 50s. It's okay. You can do that too. But I think it should be parallel. You must learn to balance. I think the key is that word balance.
Balance.
How do you balance? And you must have some degree of introspection. It's not going to happen unless, some people are lucky in a way. They take things lightly, just go with the flow. These terms are invented and they're nice, go with the flow. But I don't think as a responsible human, you can just go with the flow.
No.
You have to make your flow.
You have to make your flow. I
You
agree
have
with
to
you.
make your flow. So must balance, must prioritize. And I think we haven't touched upon this, but there's the tangibles and the intangibles. It's something that I believe very strongly in, Sajid. And that is, there is acquisitions, achievements, and accolades, which everyone wants. I want to acquire this. I want to achieve this, and I want to get accolades for this, which are very tangible, very material, and in the end, very temporary. There's a fourth one which people forget, which is our non-tangible spiritual side. I firmly believe nurture your spirit. If you don't nurture your spirit, and I'm deliberately avoiding the word religion, I have no qualms about it. I can call it religion, but a lot of people, they get afraid to say religion, almost. They thought it's almost old-fashioned to talk about religion,
Yeah.
and it's really modern to talk about spirituality. But I think the two are like this.
Go hand in hand.
So you must nurture your spiritual side. If you don't nurture your spirituality, if you don't know how to detach from the tangible material things that we run about and nurture your higher thoughts, which are these higher thoughts? Compassion, love, yeah, loyalty. You can't measure any of these. There's no counter for love, loyalty, compassion. You must have this. And I advise people that always balance your material objectives and your material ambitions with a decent amount of spiritual awareness. Then you become a whole human. Otherwise, you're just another plant.
You hear that, Kim?
Yeah.
That's free advice, unfiltered, and it should
It's
bring
a bit
true.
serious sometimes, but Sajid,
No, but
I
thank
think
you.
life
That's-
is serious.
Because the wisdom you bring is obviously stuff that you've been exposed to, the road you've walked, the chapters you've written. We are still at a much different place. So for us to see someone like you, where we feel you've reached the peak of your what we want to achieve in life, right? When we're your age, we want to at least hope to have achieved half of what you have. So mashallah, it's really insightful. Kim obviously asked me a lot of these questions, but I was like, if you want someone to look up to, there's a person over here who's done that and achieved. So thank you for breaking that down. And I think especially for a lot of the young doctors who asked me to ask you this question, it's a very good roadmap for them to balance it out. I want to sort of, as we wind things down now, go back to the music, that career. What's the future plan? What do you have lined up? Is there any special projects you're working on?
No, I think an honest confession, we've done a lot of creativity. We've created a lot of music, but we've not marketed.
Ah.
I don't know anything about marketing because we've never sold our music. We've never had concerts where people buy tickets. It's more of a cultural influence rather than a commercial
Yeah.
endeavor. So I think that is a weakness because if you do something creative, it should have a larger audience. So even now, I am self-educating, but also looking into taking professional advice that how can one market, not necessarily for material gain, but to allow more people just to know that, yes, this also is happening,
So maybe this could help you. So for me, obviously, promoting the podcast in a way that I'm not spending money. And I don't like, again, I don't like spending money through promoting that way. I sort of rather have it through relationship building.
Yes.
Because the way my audience will now dive into yours, vice versa. With the podcast, what we do is we try and see who has a large audience.
Yes.
We invite them on, and then we sort of coexist and then contribute to both our audiences.
Sure.
I think in the musical field as well, maybe collaborating with more Kenyan-based artists, local artists, African Indian artists, and exchanging ideas and doing collab posts where you sort of feed off each other. Because you have such good music that's in this niche, we sort of now need to expand the horizons. So my suggestion would be collabing with people whose audience you want to tap into, and maybe telling them, look, I have this song, would you mind collabing on it, and we can work on something. I think that would be a great
Yes,
way to
certainly.
sort of go.
I think I
What do you
realize
think,
the
Tim?
value of this. That certainly on the musical front is
Social
one.
media, do you do much? LinkedIn, sorry,
Not so
Instagram,
much. Not
Facebook.
so much.
The
But
other, I
that-
think that's
I
where
think that's where one needs to look at.
Yeah.
And that's one area which I think can be worked on. In terms of creativity, I intend for how many years the Almighty gives me to have at least one, if not every year, every 2 years, an
Sure.
album. So the albums are, even now I'm working on our next album.
Yeah.
And, these days people work on singles.
Yes. And then you put them out. Yeah.
But we've always made them as albums where it's a theme. So
Are they on
that's it.
Spotify or Apple Music?
No, they're actually only on YouTube and Facebook.
So that's so what we obviously there's no monetary benefit you get from Spotify yet, but exposure is what counts
Yeah.
because a lot of people use these platforms. What I would suggest is just putting the audio files in streaming platforms. So the Netflix version of an audio-based system, so like Spotify, Apple Music,
Apple Music.
all your music you
I
put
think
in
I
there.
need what I need from you at the end of this.
Gee.
Give me a name of
Gee.
someone who can do it.
Gee. I think so. Vish and them can actually they run a studio called Akatsuki Studios.
Yes.
They can sort of help promote you as a brand.
Yes.
And I think that would make a lot more sense. I'll
The other, you're asking about is it, ambitions, and see, our type of music is niche.
It
It is
is.
not modern music.
Yeah.
And because of the language we use, unfortunately, it directs to those people who know that language. But of course, there's huge audience where this language is spoken.
Correct.
The Pakistan, India, the Middle East, part of it, England, US, Canada.
Yeah.
So there is a large, in their millions,
Gee.
actually billions. So perhaps staying in our country, perhaps the local people may not, identify with this type
Yeah.
of music. Probably one has to target another
Correct.
population.
That's what I would suggest is we would get you on a social media platform and doing very specific targeted reach programs
Yes.
to people who understand your music.
Yes.
I think that's the first thing. Just getting on Instagram, TikTok, because they have music videos as well.
Yeah.
So clips of that, putting it on TikTok, saying Kenyan Gazal singer and stuff like that. The stuff that gets us views.
Yes.
And you never know what hits. We put a video on TikTok that recently got 175,000 views. The other one we did had 900,000 views.
Wow.
I had people from Chicago. It was a Somali-based clip that said, I believe Somalis are successful because they don't abandon namaz. They pray 5 times a day.
Oh, wow.
So I had random people all across the world just messaging me. So it just takes that one clip for someone right to hear your music.
Yeah.
Like, I want to meet this person. That could change the trajectory of where your music
That's
goes.
fine. Yeah.
So inshallah, I'll connect you with them as well. So I just wanted to thank you for coming onto the podcast. I know Amit Butch tried to connect us. We've both been traveling quite a lot. I'm so glad to have made it finally happen. You have a rich tapestry of a history. It's a small world. It's amazing how we know each other. There's so many threads of interconnection. I genuinely want to thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it was my pleasure, Sajid. I thank you for having me, for inviting me. It was great meeting you. And actually, I'm sitting in the area where I grew up. Nairobi West was my area.
That's like,
And it was very nice meeting your assistant, Mr. Kim.
yeah, yes.
And I look forward to our next interaction.
Yes, we're definitely going to have a lot more podcasts together. Right. Guys, thank you. This has been Coffee Pump. We'll catch you in the next episode.